I came up with 31 add-on ideas to make every Dead by Daylight killer more fun to play. A lot of these are not realistic because they're probably not balanced at all, but they're fun, and that's all that matters. Also, enjoy my pieces of artwork that I made in paint for every single add-on. For Trapper, we have the cotton gloves, which basically just makes it so that placing traps is completely silent. This would allow trappers to set traps in chase without being heard, so people who play him can play him in more of an aggressive way. It would also kind of help counter those survivors that just follow you around the map and disarm all of the traps that you place, because if you're on a map where they lose line of sight on you, but they can hear you placing your trap, they'll pretty much be able to find it, but if you have this add-on, they may not know where it is. For Wraith, I have the broken bell. Every 30 seconds, your bell rings globally as though you're uncloaking. So this is literally just to mess with the survivors. It's kind of like an automatic bone clapper just to make people kind of scared and just to slow survivors down a little bit. I think it'd be a super fun mechanic because you can use it to trick the survivors and to get them comfortable with hearing the sound of your bell so that when you actually do uncloak near them, they're not expecting you to be there. This would also pair really well with that one brown add-on that doesn't give you a terror radius or a red stain for 6 seconds after you cloak, because then you could probably get a bunch of grabs by uncloaking behind a wall. For Hillbilly, we have greasy oil. For every hook you get, gain a token. Each token decreases your chainsaw charge time by 1.5%. So basically, this would just like slowly bring back old Hillbilly, because if you just run this add-on alone, as you get more and more kills, you'll get stronger and stronger. And if you're able to get a bunch of hooks as Hillbilly, I think you should be rewarded for your time. Also, if you're using like beast marks or something, it'll kind of offset the downside that you have with that, so you can have a decreased charge time speed and a faster chainsaw speed. But honestly, I think they should just bring back old Hillbilly. For Nurse, we have Kaito's Last Breath. Press Control while charging your power to blink to the gen you're looking at, which is indicated by an arrow kind of like the Nightmare, and after doing so, you have a maximum of 1 charge until you get a hit. So basically, you can teleport to any single gen around the map that you want, but if you do teleport to a gen, then you only have 1 blink until you get a hit. So you have to be very, very precise with your hits. I didn't really want to give her an add-on that would make her overpowered, because she's obviously already the strongest killer in the game, but I do think that being able to blink across the entire map would be like a really fun mechanic, and it'll also be kind of a risk reward, because obviously being able to go across the entire map is a very, very strong ability, but being capped at 1 blink in total makes it so that you have to actually be a very, very good nurse, or the survivors have to be very, very bad for you to offset this strong ability. For Huntress, I call this one the Entity's Hatchet. This one's a little complex, but basically the entity allows your hatchets to travel through one object, although while they're in the object, they get stuck for a brief moment, but maintain their momentum afterwards. So for example, if you have a wall, just a flat wall, and you throw your hatchet towards the wall, the entity will like kind of create a hole that the hatchet can go through, but while the hatchet is in the wall, it gets slowed down for a little bit, and then once it makes it through the other side of the wall, then it gets spat out again in the same momentum that it had coming in. Does that make sense? The reason I wanted this is because it would be very, very fun to do like through wall hatchet plays like across the map too, because obviously it'd be very counterable for survivors because they'd get some sort of audio cue that it's coming through the wall or something, and they'd have some sort of visual cue as well. So it's not like it's uncounterable from the survivors, because the hatchet would be traveling through the wall for a couple seconds before it's spat out. But it would just make Huntress chases feel so much cooler. And also, if you're going for cross maps, there's a lot of maps that just have like random trees or something that'll just stop your cross map from happening. So I feel like it'd be very cool just to be able to go for a cross map, have it go through a tree and hit a survivor. For Michael Myers, this is the two-way mirror. While stalking, you can see the auras of every survivor, but they can also see your aura. I honestly think Myers has a lot of fun add-ons already. So for this one, I kind of wanted to make it like an object of obsession sort of thing, where the killer can see everybody, but the survivors all know when he's seeing their auras. So this would just give you free information constantly, but it would also give the survivors free information, so it could put you at a disadvantage. And again, this could be totally broken and totally overpowered, but this is just for fun. There's no balance involved. For Hag, this is called Dry Mud. Press Control to switch to fake traps, kind of like how you switch to yellow bottles as Clown. You have 5 fake traps available, and these act as regular Hag traps, but you're unable to teleport to them. So this would basically just allow you to have extra traps, but they don't actually have a function necessarily. So you could just mind game survivors very easily with them, and you could honestly probably pair it with that one add-on that makes Hag traps have collision, but you can't teleport to them, and actually have like a viable reason to run that add-on. This would also kind of mitigate the new Hag nerf where survivors can, you know, wipe away the traps, because now survivors also need to wipe away your fake traps, not knowing whether or not they're real. For Doctor, I'm calling this the Iridescent Pawn. It creates fake generators when survivors are in Madness 2 or 3. Survivors can repair fake generators until they receive a skill check. The skill check cannot be successfully hit, so it'll pop up and it'll just keep going, like you can't hit it, and the total regression from that missed skill check applies to every currently progressed generator. Missing a skill check normally regresses a generator by 10%. So for example, if there are 2 currently progressed gens, each one will be regressed by 5% instead of 10. So it's split evenly among the progressed gens. I think it's just a fun way to like kind of apply additional slowdown. It's not huge slowdown, but it makes survivors work on an additional generator that doesn't actually help them out until they get a skill check. And then that skill check applies even more slowdown to other gens. But it's just like a tiny bit of slowdown, so you can't pair it with a bunch of stuff to make it like genuinely terrible. For Bubba, I'm calling this one caffeinated chili. This one might be really stupid, but I think it's kind of fun. When hitting an object with your chainsaw and going into tantrum, your charges get reduced to 1 instead of 0. Right click again to consume this charge, allowing you to quickly dash forward 5 meters while you're in your tantrum. I think this would just make his tantrum feel a little bit better, because sometimes you run into some terrible hitboxes when you're looping somebody at like a kind of a round loop. The reason I think this would be kind of a nice like quality of life add-on is because, for example, if a survivor throws a pallet and you're looping them and you accidentally hit like a stupid hitbox, you could just right click again, throw yourself forward towards that pallet and be able to break it while you're in your tantrum. Or you could use it to catch up to survivors as well that are being cocky. Because I know a lot of survivors that if you do hit your tantrum, will just stand in front of you just like staring at you. So this would be able to kind of surprise them with a little sneak attack. For Freddy Krueger, I'm calling this one the paralysis coin. In the dream world, there are 5 other nightmares walking around the map in random directions. So I think this would just be super funny because it would just freak everybody out that's in the dream world for no reason. So you never know which one is real or which one is not real. And this would also just create some funny moments where like you're pretending to be one of them and then you just come out of nowhere and hit them anyway. For the pig, I'm calling this iron tips. Using your ambush can break pallets and breakable doors. I honestly kind of think this should just be base kit because, you know, Demogorgon has it and Blight has it, but she just needs a buff to her ambush. Like, it's so easy to counter her ambush if you know what you're doing. So I think being able to break things with it would be a fine add-on to add because it would allow you to make decisions on like if you want to commit to ambushing the survivor or if you want to use that ambush to just break the pallet and get on with your life. It also wouldn't be too overpowered because if you just want to like break a breakable door, for example, you'd still have to go through the animation of crouching and then charging up your ambush. It definitely would not be too broken. For Clown, this is the rusty dumbbell. You could throw your purple gas 50% farther, and if you throw it at least a certain amount of meters away, survivors who step in your gas will suffer the hindered status effect for a certain amount of time longer and will be exposed for a certain amount of time. I don't know what values to put here that would like be kind of fair because I don't technically know how far the Clown can throw, but basically it would just reward you for getting really far away hits. So it's just rewarding you for being good. That's basically all it is. For Spirit, I have the Blossom Petals. It allows you to damage generators, pallets, or breakable doors, as well as snuffing boons while you're phasing. Doing so will pause your phase for the duration of the animation. I think this is just like a nice quality of life thing to Spirit, where you don't have to lose your power if you want to break any of these things. It's exactly like Legion's add-on, where you can break things while in Feral Frenzy and it pauses your timer. So it just allows you to keep your power going while still being able to do these actions. And theoretically, you could keep triggering animations to keep pausing your timer to really confuse the survivors. For Legion, we have the Poisoned Blade. After downing a survivor while in Feral Frenzy, so on that 5th Feral Frenzy hit, all survivors within your terror radius scream and become exposed for a certain amount of time. Again, I don't know what that time should be, but I feel like there should be an add-on that rewards you for being able to get that down. If you're able to get 5 hits while in Feral Frenzy, that's the survivor's fault. Like, it's literally the survivor's fault. So I think they should be punished for allowing you to be able to do that. For Plague, we have the Lethal Loogie. Your puke becomes projectile based instead of a fluid. So you have to charge the full bar to shoot, but it has an unlimited range until it comes into contact with an object. I don't really know how to describe it. Think of like a pea shooter from Plants vs. Zombies. Like, it's just that, but like Plague puke. So you can go for like really cool cross-map shots and stuff, but you do have to fill up your entire meter. So it's kind of like that risk reward where it's easy to shoot because it's in a straight line, but it takes longer to shoot. I think this would just kind of change Plague's playstyle because it would also work when you're in your Corrupt Purge too. So you could technically hit somebody from across the entire map if they somehow run into your red puke. For Ghostface, we have the Voice Changer. Whenever you go into Night Shroud, your red stain and your terror radius remain in the same location until you come out of Night Shroud. So basically, you can just use your power to pause where your red stain and terror radius are, which I think would be so cool and a much needed buff for his chase. I think it would just cause some insane mind games and just open up a lot of creative potential with this killer. And I feel like it would just be fun for both the survivors and the killers because it's just more mind games that you have to do. For Demogorgon, we have the 20-sided die. Teleporting no longer creates a global audio cue for the survivors. The reason I wanted this add-on is because I don't think Demogorgon version has enough stealth-based add-ons. There's some killers that have a complete stealth playstyle that you can do. Like, for example, Hillbilly has the Apex Muffler, which makes his chainsaw completely silent if they're not in your terror radius. So if you have something like Tinkerer, you can have no chainsaw sounds as you're coming up to their gen. But with Demogorgon, we only really have add-ons that kind of extend the undetectable status effect when he teleports, but everybody knows you teleported anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So I feel like people not knowing that you teleported would just be such a fun, like, interesting mechanic to have in the game, because then survivors will have to be paranoid and will really have to kind of figure out where the portals are. If they find this to be too overpowered, they could just make it so that every single portal is visible to survivors when you place them for the first time, instead of them being invisible until you use them. For Oni, we have the Fermented Tongue. Every time you absorb a survivor's blood orb, their aura is revealed for half a second, and the aura reading stacks for every blood orb you absorb that is theirs. So if you picked up 2 of their blood orbs, you'd see them for 1 second. If you picked up 4, you'd see them for 2. Does that make sense? So it's just every single blood orb just adds an extra half a second. This is just a better version of his current iridescent add-on, which makes survivors able to pick up their blood orbs at the cost of showing you their aura. Instead, I think it should be reworked into this, where you should be rewarded for survivors bleeding. I think this might be especially strong when you find a giant pool of blood, because when you absorb all of that blood, you'll see somebody's aura for like 10 seconds, and you'll be able to go into your ability since you just picked up a lot of blood. So it might be a little bit overpowered, and of course things might need to be tweaked, but it would be better than the iridescent add-on we have now. Deathslinger. This Deathslinger one is actually the most insane thing I've come up with. Shiny Spurs. After 2 generators are completed, you and the survivors gain a 20% haste for the remainder of the trial. So everybody is moving just 20% faster. Your spear now damages survivors if they are further than 8 meters away. So I wanted to use this add-on as potential to make like a quick scoping match. You know what I mean? So if you're able to hit survivors that are further than 8 meters away from you with your spear while everybody's moving 20% faster, you earn a damage state. I think it'd just be such a fun mechanic for both the survivors and the killer, because after those 2 generators are completed, the game suddenly turns into like this really fun, like dodge and weave kind of quick scoping, like Call of Duty match in a sense. It's such a stupid and unrealistic idea, but it would be so unbelievably fun. For Executioner, we have the Pendulum Egg. Your Punishment of the Damned range starts at 2 meters. So if you stick your sword on the ground and launch it, it'll only go 2 meters, but the range increases depending on how long your sword is in the ground, up to a maximum of 16 meters. So that's double what it currently is. So you lose the ability to quickly use your power in loops, but you gain the ability to use your power from much further away, which can help you get some insane hits through walls and on generators, and could pair really well with stuff like Nurse's Calling if people are healing. I think it'd be a fun shakeup to how you play this killer, and completely changes how you approach different situations. For Blight, we have Compound X. While rushing, bumping into walls is completely silent. If you can't tell, I think stealth killers really makes Dead by Daylight fun, and we need to have more things that are kind of scary. So you could pair this with like the Vigo's Journal add-on that makes you undetectable while you're rushing to completely surprise survivors and have a lot of like really fast jump scare moments. I think this would be absolutely hilarious and would cause so many just funny DBD clips. It would also kind of switch up Blight's playstyle a bit, because you can approach situations differently by taking a longer route around a survivor so that they don't see you coming. For Twins, we have the Poison Mushroom, and this is probably the stupidest but funniest thing I have on this list. But basically, at the start of the trial, Victor falls out of the sky and lands on the Obsession's head. So you essentially get an injure state right off the bat, and it would also just jump scare the Obsession for no reason, and it'd be so funny. Like, imagine you're just loading in as a survivor onto a DBD match, and right when you're able to move your character, you hear Victor scream and he gets attached to your head, like instantly. It would be so scary, and it'd be so hilarious. Plus, it would also be kind of practical, because A, you get a free injure state at the beginning of the game, and B, you also get free information on the whereabouts of the survivors, because if Victor's on somebody's head, you can see where they are. For Trickster, we have the Magic Card. This kind of changes his main event a little bit. While in main event, holding left click will place knives in the air facing the direction you are currently facing. Pressing right click will launch all of the floating knives in that direction. So this is essentially taking the artist's power, but applying it to Trickster's knives. So obviously, if you do want to damage a survivor using it, you will have to put enough knives to be able to damage them, but you can kind of use it to set up like an anti-loop thing while you're in your main event. For Nemesis, we have the Police Radio. Once you're in tier 3, you gain the ability to press the control button to call all of your zombies to your current location. They will walk to that location, but will still lock onto any survivors if they detect one. I think this would just help kind of mitigate that RNG that you have with with the zombies. So you can actually bring the zombies to a certain location instead of them just being like completely useless on the other side of the map. I think zombies are a good concept in general, but just the fact that they're so unreliable makes it kind of hard to use. The only thing I could see kind of being annoying with this ability is the fact that you'd probably be able to hold 3 gens or camp pretty easily. So there'd have to be some sort of balancing. Like you can't do it if you're X amount of meters within somebody on the hook or something. For Pinhead, we have Derelict's Horn. Survivors must complete a series of quick time event button presses to solve the box. So instead of just holding right click, you'd have to press different buttons that are prompted on your screen. But you have to have a good reaction time because for every quick time event they miss, a chain spawns and attaches to them, slowing their progress speed of solving the box by X amount of percent. Probably something small like 2 or 5 or something. The additional chains remain attached to that survivor if they stop solving the box or if you teleport to them. So for example, if they miss 2 of these quick time events while they're solving the box, they have 2 chains attached to them. So if you interrupt them and they stop solving the box, they're going to be stuck there until they get rid of those 2 chains. And also if you teleport to them, they have those 2 chains attached as well, allowing you to catch up a little bit easier. For Artist, we have the passive Crow, which I think should just be a base mechanic in her ability. While holding your power button, you no longer spook crows. If you are within 5 meters of a natural crow, press the control button to tame the crow. A tamed crow will continuously caw if there is a survivor within a 16-meter radius of them. Survivors can spook the crow to make it fly away and undo this effect. I don't know why she doesn't have this to begin with, but it would just allow her to go out of her way to get additional information, and it also just like fits with her character as well. But it wouldn't be too overpowered because survivors can just get rid of the crow whenever they want. This is one that I definitely do think should be added to the game. For Onryo, we have the static eye. While demanifested, hold the control button to gaze through the TV you are currently looking at. So you can kind of use them like security cameras in a sense to be able to see if there are survivors in front of that TV. But survivors will be able to see that you're looking through the TVs. You know that one part of the Mori where you can see her eye, the scene from the movie? It'd just be like that, but on the TV. So you can see that the Onryo is looking through that TV. Does that make sense? For Dredge, we have the broken plank. Teleport at nightfall speed when not in nightfall, but teleport at regular speed when in nightfall. However, because this is extremely strong, you come out of locked lockers twice as slow. So survivors that actually go out of their way to lock the lockers will make you suffer a little bit, but being able to teleport that quickly around the map to unlocked lockers is a very, very good ability. But you do kind of get nerfed during nightfall, so you have to keep that in mind. I think this would just make him feel like a faster paced killer, which will make him a little bit more fun to play. For Wesker, we have sunglasses. He already has sunglasses on, so I think this should just kind of be base kit in a sense, but basically this add-on just makes flashlights, firecrackers, etc. blind you for 50% shorter. I honestly think that this should just be kind of base kit because he has sunglasses on already. So this would just kind of be a fun little extra thing. It's probably not that good, but you know, it's fine. If you're sick and tired of flashlight squads, you can run this. For Knight, we have aged gunpowder. This one is just kind of what I want the Knight to be in general, instead of just having 3 guards that can damage survivors. So here's how this works. This one's a little bit more complex. The guards will no longer chase survivors, but will instead each have their own power. The Carnifex, which is normally the one that breaks things faster, will break things 15% faster than it already does currently, and will also apply a 5% regression to a generator if he's used to break a gen. So every time you have the Carnifex, you can add a little like tiny Pop Goes the Weasel to that generator. The Assassin, which is normally the really fast one that'll put survivors into deep wound if they're hit, will now sprint to the nearest survivor, revealing their location. So you have a breaking things quickly character, you have a tracking character, and then you have the Jailer, which normally just has a bigger detection range and a longer patrol time, but instead he can now be used on windows or generators to cause the entity to block them for 15 seconds. So you have kind of an anti-loop ability if you want to use it on windows, and you have a small slowdown ability if you want to use it on generators. I don't know how underpowered or overpowered this may be, especially with all of his add-ons that allow you to get some like twice in a row or whatever, but I just think that they should remove the ability for the guards to be able to hit survivors and instead just make them have their own characteristics like more amplified. And last but certainly least, the Skull Merchant. For her, we have the music player. Every drone that is placed has a terror radius attached to it. I think she needs to have her stealth more amplified in her kit because currently it's kind of hit or miss depending on if your stealth actually does anything. So this would just allow you to confuse survivors, especially ones that aren't really paying attention to where your terror radius is. So if a survivor is trying to disable a drone, you can come out of nowhere and they'll still be hearing the terror radius of the drone, so they won't know that you're coming. If you want to see 3 secrets that you didn't know for every single killer in Dead by Daylight, click on this video on screen now. Also, drop a like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe if you're new, and leave your ideas for add-ons down in the comments below.